Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I just had the creepiest experience on a recent business trip when I discovered multiple hidden cameras planted around my hotel room. It still makes my skin crawl thinking about some stranger spying on me in my private moments. I reported it right away, but I'll definitely be more vigilant checking for cameras in the future when traveling. I was on a solo work trip last week to attend a few days of meetings and conventions. It was an exhausting schedule of conferences and seminars from morning to night. By the time I got back to my hotel room each evening, I was drained and just wanted to unwind. The first couple of nights were perfectly normal. I kick off my shoes, grab a snack from the minibar, and flip on the TV to decompress before heading to bed. The room seemed like any standard hotel, bed, TV, bathroom. Nothing out of the ordinary. But on the third night, I noticed something that gave me pause. I was eating a snack while sitting against the headboard and happened to look up. In the ceiling vent, I spotted a tiny lens flash. My heartbeat quickened, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Just a metal screw or some kind of light reflection. Still, I grabbed a towel and climbed onto a chair to check the vent cover. When I peered in, I saw a small camera lens tucked in the corner. Shaken, I started scouring the room more closely for anything else suspicious. And that's when I found yet another concealed camera. This one hidden inside a hole poked in the showerhead nozzle. My hands were trembling and I felt like I was going to throw up, realizing I had been secretly recorded. Were there more cameras? Were they transmitting footage somewhere? The invasion of privacy was sickening. Frantically, I kept searching and discovered one last hidden lens cam disguised inside the TV remote. Who knows how long they had been filming oblivious guests? I felt violated knowing someone had spied on me in my private, vulnerable moments. Nauseous, I called down to the front desk and reported finding multiple concealed cameras in my room. The manager sounded very alarmed and came up immediately with security to remove the devices and launch an investigation. They confirmed the cameras had capabilities to stream and record footage and seemed to have been recently planted. The GM profusely apologized and promised to comb every inch of the property for any additional devices. I was too shaken to sleep that night, tossing and turning at every little noise, wondering if I was still being watched. The next morning, I gave my statement to police who would try to identify potential suspects. But the damage was done. For the remainder of my trip, I was a nervous wreck, barricading chairs against my door and triple-checking for hidden lenses everywhere. I cut my stay short, feeling unsafe there now that my privacy had been so horrifically violated. Even being home, I still feel haunted knowing someone specifically targeted me and plotted to invade my privacy in such a sick way. The police have made no progress tracking down suspects yet. I'll certainly never stay at that hotel again, though the cameras could have been placed by any guest or staff. Now when I travel for work, I bring a small camera detector and meticulously inspect every inch of the room, looking for anything suspicious. Finding those lenses has made me hyper-vigilant about my safety and privacy. I hate that there are depraved individuals who try to exploit unsuspecting travelers. But it's a cold reality that we must be very cautious, especially alone in unfamiliar places. I'm thankful I noticed those cameras when I did. The thought of footage of me out there makes me feel ill. But all one can do is take precautions and be aware of our surroundings. This chilling experience taught me hotels may not be as secure as they seem. We have to stay alert and watch for anything out of place. I'll certainly never look at another generic hotel room the same way again after having my own privacy so grossly violated like that. It's a harsh lesson, but one I hope can help others be more cautious traveling. Predators are constantly finding sinister ways to exploit regular people. We can only combat them through vigilance and speaking out when we come across such depravity. A sickening feeling of violation washed over me as I started scouring every corner and crevice of the hotel room much more closely, searching for anything else that seemed out of place or suspicious. As I was meticulously inspecting inside the bathroom, a chill went down my spine when I noticed the shower head had an almost imperceptible tiny hole poked right in the metal nozzle. My heart began pounding rapidly in my chest. Fighting a rising sense of nausea, I climbed onto the edge of the bathtub to get an up-close look at the abnormal-looking pinprick hole. Leaning in cautiously, I squinted directly into the minuscule opening and could just barely make out the unmistakable outline and glint of a small camera lens tucked covertly inside. The horrific realization that I had likely been secretly filmed in the act of showering, my exposed wet body on display for some perverted stranger's viewing pleasure, made my stomach lurch and roil as I shook with disgust and outrage. Violated didn't even begin to cover the depth of how I felt knowing my privacy had been so grotesquely invaded. With trembling, unsteady hands, I forced myself to slowly keep searching over every single inch of the bathroom, behind the sink, inside the medicine cabinet, under the vanity, looking for any other signs of hidden cameras. I inspected every minor crevice with paranoid scrutiny until finally, I was reasonably satisfied there were no more deviously planted eyes or lenses hiding anywhere, spying voyeuristically on my vulnerable, unsuspecting self. But the damage was already done. I felt corroded, my peace of mind ruptured knowing that I had been secretly preyed upon and exploited by some unknown predator's sick desires. The thought of footage of my exposed body floating around somewhere out there made me want to peel off my own skin. I would never feel safe or relaxed in any hotel ever again. I'm not sure I'll ever forget the terrifying night I spent alone in a hotel room, convinced someone was occupying the empty room right above me. The staff swore up and down no one else was staying on my floor, yet I kept hearing incredibly disturbing noises from directly overhead all through the night. To this day, I have no explanation for the creepy events I experienced there alone. I had booked a standard room in a fairly nice but budget chain hotel for a quick work trip, checked in after a long day of client meetings, ordered room service for dinner, and settled in for the night to catch up on some work emails before bed. Around 10 p.m., just as I was powering down my laptop for the night, I first heard it, a loud thudding sound from what sounded like footsteps in the room above mine. I assumed another guest was moving around up there and didn't think much of it at first. But the deeply unsettling and downright disturbing noises continued sporadically on and off throughout the late night and early morning hours. I hear the loud creaking of old bed springs, as if a large person was violently tossing and turning or aggressively jumping up and down. Heavy pacing footsteps would thunder back and forth across the floor overhead, sometimes suddenly stopping directly above where my bed was positioned below. And periodic dull yet jarring thudding sounds resonated through the ceiling, like heavy furniture being forcefully shoved around, or even something large and wet violently slamming up against the walls. It all sounded positively unmistakable, as if a very sizable individual was wide awake and full of restless, violent energy in the midnight hours. The person was stomping around the room, pacing heavily like a caged animal, tossing furniture, and emitting disturbing screams and groans that made my blood run cold. This was not normal settling building noises. This was terrifyingly sinister. By 11 p.m., as the sounds not only persisted but escalated, I had given up trying futilely to ignore and sleep through the permeating din. My nerves were completely frayed from vain attempts at rest while enduring the onslaught of chaos and destruction occurring right above me. Utterly overwhelmed, I called down to the front desk on the verge of tears. I urgently yet politely asked if they could please request the guest staying in the room directly above me to keep it down or be evicted, because the aggressive banging, pounding, and all-around demolishing noises overhead were beyond disruptive. They were making me feel completely unsafe alone as a woman. That's when the desk agent informed me there were no occupied rooms on my entire floor. In fact, I was the sole checked-in guest on that level that night. Unease crept up my spine as she confirmed my room should be silent with no guests overhead. So what was causing the inexplicable noises still continuing intermittently? I nervously thanked the agent and hung up, listening intently. More muted creaks and thuds were definitely coming from the ceiling above. I turned the TV volume way up, trying to drown it out. But the ominous sounds persisted through the night. Heavy footsteps, furniture scraping, even occasional knocking at what I presumed was the floor of the room. Not a wink of sleep came as I lay rigidly listening, glancing repeatedly at the solid ceiling. I kept calling the front desk, but they maintained no one was booked in that supposedly empty room. Around 3 a.m., I heard what could only be described as a loud human wail that jolted me out of bed in sheer terror. At that point, I threw on clothes and went straight to the lobby, demanding answers. Visibly uneasy staff claimed total ignorance, but agreed to come inspect my room. In the light, nothing seemed amiss, yet the noises had continued the whole time I was downstairs. Management finally offered to move me to another floor, which I readily agreed to even though it was after 4 a.m. by then. A bellhop helped transfer my bags upstairs to a new room as far from my original one as possible. The new room was blissfully quiet, but I didn't sleep a wink. In the morning light, everything that happened seemed bizarre and implausible. Surely I had just imagined the sounds in my exhaustion. But hotel management remained perplexed, even sending security to thoroughly inspect every nook of that vacant floor I had been on. Of course, they found no evidence of intruders. I cut my trip short and left that day badly shaken. I almost felt I had imagined the whole thing until I received a letter from the hotel weeks later. They had apparently received a handful of guest complaints over the past year about noises from empty floors. But surveillance found no cause or proof. They'd apologized and refunded my stay, hoping I would give them another chance. But I just can't bring myself to book there again after such an unnerving experience. Something very sinister was going on, whether human-caused or otherwise. The feeling of vulnerability kept me up for weeks after. The utter helplessness still haunts me when I'm alone in strange places at night. Other travelers may luckily never experience what I did in that hotel where unseen forces occupied the vacant spaces, but it taught me a lasting lesson about trust and safety while on the road. If your instincts tell you something is amiss, don't ignore them for convenience's sake, and don't wait to take action or switch locations to feel secure again. Your well-being should always take priority over a room reservation when you just can't shake that feeling that you are not alone. For your own peace of mind, listen closely and be prepared to walk away. Staying at the antique Grand Royal Hotel last month is an experience that still leaves me unsettled weeks later. From the moment I checked into the spacious but aged room, odd things started disappearing whenever I left the room, yet there was never any sign of forced entry. Security swore my room was totally secure, making the mystifying events even more disturbing. I had booked a last-minute staycation at a historic Grand Royal in my own city just to get away and recharge for a few days. I loved the ornate old-world architecture and style of the place and the large rooms with vintage furnishings. Sure, some aspects seemed dingy and dated, but I chalked it up to old-world charm. My room was on the 3rd floor at the end of an empty hallway lined with faded floral carpet. Inside, heavy burgundy drapes blocked the sun and gave the room an eerie reddish cast, but I was too excited about my little retreat to mind the ominous vibe. After checking in, I headed out to enjoy the spa and a long dinner at the fancy in-house restaurant. I returned after dark, exhausted and ready to veg out with a movie. That's when I first noticed it. The antique clock that had been on the bedside table was now missing. Odd, but figure housekeeping must have taken it for cleaning. However, when I awoke the next morning, I was horrified to discover even more of my personal belongings had mysteriously vanished overnight. This time, the antique Baroque-style oil painting that had been hanging prominently above the ornate dark mahogany dresser was now gone. In its place was just an irregular, dust-free rectangle on the wall, leaving an obvious negative space where once a priceless masterpiece had been displayed. Additionally, one of the intricate bronze bedside lamps with a fringed silk shade had completely disappeared without a trace. The left nightstand was now jarringly bare with just an empty circular indentation in the lacquered wood and the exposed electrical cord sitting limply where a functioning light fixture had previously illuminated the room. I was really confused and increasingly unsettled, my heart beginning to race. This had to be more than just misplaced housekeeping items. I immediately called down to the front desk to urgently report these newest bizarre disappearances. Within minutes, hotel security arrived to thoroughly inspect my room, looking for any signs of break-in or forced entry that could explain the vanished items. But the guards found absolutely no indications that the door locks had been picked or tampered with whatsoever. No scratches, no loose screws, no splintered door jams. They confirmed the room had remained totally secure all night with only my key granting access. At a complete loss now, the hotel staff fetched replacement decor items from storage to return my room to order, as I reluctantly headed out to continue my unnerving stay, scratching my head in utter confusion and dread at this increasingly sinister, unexplained situation. Now I was really confused and unsettled. I immediately called down to the front desk to report the bizarre new disappearances. Hotel security soon arrived to thoroughly inspect my room, but found no signs whatsoever of any break-in or forced entry. The door lock seemed completely undisturbed. They'd assured me the room had been totally secure all night with only me having access. At a loss, the hotel staff fetched replacement decor items from storage, and I reluctantly headed out to continue my stay, still scratching my head in utter bewilderment at this increasingly eerie situation. That night, after returning from the pool, even more items were gone. The room fan, a pillow, and all towels from the bathroom. Even eerier, the remaining furniture had been moved around while I was out. Feeling violated, I went to the lobby and demanded answers. Again, security swore my room was totally secure with only me having accessed it. They moved me to another room and took my key for repairs. The first 2 nights there, I locked all valuables in the safe, yet smaller things still went missing. Toiletries, stationery. By the last night, I was on edge, barricading furniture against the door. I jumped at every creak, hearing phantom footsteps in the hallway. When morning finally came, I was relieved to escape after barely sleeping. I recounted the bizarre events to management again at checkout. They were puzzled but dismissive, blaming it on an aging hotel with a faulty key system. But I know what I experienced. Someone or something had free access to my supposedly secure room to take what they pleased. I scoured the internet and found mentions of other guests reporting similar unsettling experiences over the years at Grand Royal Hotel. Valuables that go missing, furniture being moved, feeling watched while alone in the room. The hotel always denies incidents. Clearly, they want to conceal something sinister. I still shudder thinking of the fear I felt each night, wondering what would be taken next as I lay rigid listening for sounds of an intruder. The inability to trust my surroundings kept me on high alert the entire stay. I felt powerless over whatever forces were at work there. While local authorities found nothing conclusive, I'd know my experience at the Grand Royal Hotel was real and frightening. The fact that the mystery remains unsolved continues to unsettle me deeply. Whatever unnatural presence resides there that can slip in and out of locked rooms is a danger to unsuspecting guests. My advice: avoid the historic hotel unless you welcome things going bump in the night. For me, some questions are best left unanswered. The unknown evils lurking there are not worth the risk. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.